Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is a contemporary edition of the Asexual Awareness Week panel. I am so excited to be talking with some ACE authors, authors of ACE books, Jen Ferguson, Skye Quinlan, and Emma Oland. Can you each introduce yourselves? I guess I'll introduce myself first. I forgot I was here and I matter, I guess. I'm Rosiee Thor. I'm the author of Tarnished Are the Stars and Fire Becomes Her, both asexual leads in science fiction and fantasy. But it's not about me today, so I'll let the rest of you go ahead and introduce yourselves as well. Jen, do you want to start us off?
Hello, everyone. I am Jen Ferguson, author of The Summer of Bitter and Sweet. It is about an 18-year-old Métis teen named Lou who is working for her family's organic dairy and ice cream business and has a very tumultuous summer. That's where I'm going to leave it. Lots of things happen.
It's a very apt title. And speaking of apt titles, Skye.
Hi, I'm Skye Quinlan, and I wrote the book Forward March. It is about a girl named Harper who is in her high school's marching band, and somebody is currently catfishing her on Tinder. And it's a whole mess for her because they're catfishing a girl, and she doesn't even know if she likes girls. And not only is her mom like the principal at her boarding school, but her dad is also running for president as a Republican. So she cannot have this profile, and I will leave it there.
Definitely some chaos to ensue from there. Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Oland. I'm the author of Funeral Girl. I actually just got my author copies today, so I had to set this up. It's about 16-year-old Georgia Richter growing up in her family's funeral home, and she can talk to ghosts. And then when she wakes the ghost of a classmate, she has to help him complete his final wish.
Awesome. Well, I hope that people check out your books if they haven't read them already, because they all sound amazing. Actually, they are all amazing. I know this from experience. I can guarantee an amazing time if you want to pick up any of those. But I want to talk to you all about the writing experience and writing asexual characters, because each book stars a character who is on the asexual spectrum. So let's talk a little bit about you and your journeys to writing something like this. What brought you to writing about the asexual experience? Was it your own experiences or reading other books? What got you on this road and to where you are right now with your debut books out in the world? Let's start with Emma.
Yeah, so I started writing this book when I was 16 years old, actually, and that was before I used the word ace. And I really wanted to tell a story that wasn't a love story, because I didn't vibe with them. I hated them. Every book had romance, and I was like, no, I want a book without romance. And that's kind of where it started for me. And then I was writing this character and she was Ace. And I was like, oh, an interesting decision to make, Emma, that has nothing to do with me, I guess. But as I was writing it as like a teenager, it really actually helped me realize that this was something my brain was kind of subconsciously putting in front of me to process. So this is actually a huge reason that I came to realize my own identity. But yeah, I think that's kind of it.
I love that. That totally vibes for me. In my experience, like I'm always attacking myself with my own characters. I feel like I write something and I'm like, gee, why would I choose to write about this? And then it's like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, it's because that's about me actually. So I totally vibe with that. Jen, what about you?
So I had the exact opposite story that Emma told. My dog's just gonna shove his face in the camera. He's a camera
Dogs are always welcome.
fan. I had been writing adult literary fiction for a really, really long time. I started writing YA, and I wrote a YA book that I queried that got lots of, I love it, but I don't know how to sell it, or I love it, but I'm not in love with it. And I was thinking about not writing anymore. I was sort of like, okay, maybe I'm done. And a friend of mine, Jamie Paxton, who writes YA contemporary and has a YA fantasy that's coming out like in days. It's called The Vermilion Emporium.
Love Jamie.
Jamie was talking to me, and Jamie said something like, well, why don't you write about the personal stuff you've been talking to me about? Which was me coming to realize that it was Ace, and me grappling with my understanding of my Indigenous background mixed with my white backgrounds and walking through the world with someone who has white skin. So I was having all of these personal problems. And Jamie said, why don't you write about them? And I sat down and I started writing. And I wrote The Summer of Bitter and Sweet really, really fast. And it seemed to resonate with publishing, and it seems to be resonating with readers. So this was sort of like the book I wrote, and then I passed it to my parents. And it was like me coming out to my parents was with the arc of the book. Exactly the opposite of Emma. I figured it out and realized I had to like write my way through it.
That's awesome. I love that you got to come out with the book. That's really fun. Yeah. What about you, Sky?
So I knew I was ace like when I was like really, really young. I didn't have like I was kind of like Emma. I didn't really have a word for it, but I knew like, okay, I'm different. I don't know how yet, but then I was introduced to the world of Tumblr, and I went down a Tumblr rabbit hole and found like the word asexual, and I was like, oh, okay, this really fits. And then when it came to writing Forward March, I had written a couple of other books. I wrote a sci-fi, I wrote a fantasy, and they were both, there were not ace characters. Like I wasn't like really ready to like accept that part of myself yet. And then when it came time to write Forward March, I told my wife, I was like, okay, I want a book about marching band. And I started writing it and then I stopped. And I was like, I don't know what about this book and what about this character is not fitting for me. And then she was like, well, you're ace, and Harper really reads as ace to me. So I think like making Harper ace is probably like the missing piece here. And made Harper ace, and I finished the book. I think I wrote it start to finish in maybe a month and a half. So yeah, it kind of like Jen, like it was kind of getting attention from like agents and publishers. They were like, oh no, it's marching band. I don't know how to sell it. And then I got really, really lucky with my editor who did end up picking it up. And she's like, the ace part of this is what sells this book. I really love the ace part. And like, so that's how Forward March came to be. And Harper is just like a personification of like my aceness. She experiences ace the same way that I do. So yeah, so.
I love that. It's so cool when you get like further along in publishing and having, I think we've all probably experienced some form of discouraging experience with publishing. And when you do finally get there and the person that you're working with is just so encouraging and lovely, that's really nice. I do want to talk a little bit about how you experience aceness and how the characters experience aceness. Obviously, you know, the ace spectrum is a very vast array of identities. There's lots of ways to experience being ace, and there are different sublabels within asexuality. And I'm curious how, how you landed on the different identities that you're working with in each of your books, how you found the right labels or the right way of expressing that aceness, and just how you explored that within each of your books. Sky, do you want to start, since you gave such a good answer about that just now? Bounce off of that.
Yeah, sure. So Harper, and like she's very ace in that she's romantically attracted to people, but she's not sexually attracted to anybody. Harper's experience with ace is very based on my experience. I have a wife who is not ace, and sorry, I'm probably gonna talk about her a lot because like she, I don't know. So Harper meets Margot, and Margot doesn't care that she's ace. And that was very similar to my experience. Like being lesbian is kind of one thing, but like I've actually experienced a lot more discrimination for being ace than being gay, which is like really weird. But I have like a really, really supportive wife who, she's not ace, but I am, and we make it work. And that's very much how it is in Forward March with Harper and Margot. And there's a scene in the book where Harper comes out to Margot and she's like, by the way, I'm ace. I don't know if this changes anything for you. Margot's like, I don't care. She's like, I like you. We'll figure it out. You know, sex is fun, but it's not like every part of a relationship. And yeah, so Harper's just like me. She's like very romantically attracted to the person she's with. And she was just, I don't know, it was just really important to me. Like before Forward March, I had never seen any like ace representation anywhere. So Forward March was like my way of like putting like my specific like aceness out there. So yeah, it was just, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that your wife was such a huge part of the journey to this book. I think that's really lovely.
She is. She was. She's sitting right here. But
oh, hi. Everybody say hi to Sky's wife. Emma, what about you?
So I got so engrossed in Sky's answer. Could you repeat the question?
Of course I can. We're talking a little bit about the different flavors of ace, and how you came to find the right way of expressing that in your book, and
Yeah,
the
okay.
type of
For
ace that your character is, and why that
Right. For sure. So with Funeral Girl, it's Georgia, the main character, her aceness is it just is, and it doesn't relate in a lot of ways to the plot. Because for me, a lot of queer stories were, coming out stories, which are absolutely wonderful, and I can never get enough of them. But I really, really wanted to write one where the character just kind of existed and used the term the way I kind of just exist and use the term. And obviously, being ace, like, it does affect how I see the world, but it isn't always quote relevant, and it doesn't always quote come up. And so I kind of wanted that to be how the aceness exists in Funeral Girl. So it's not that it's like subtly ace, it's just that the way it's handled is like, yeah, she is, there you go. And that's like that's all you need, and she doesn't owe any further explanations on that to anybody. And that was important to me. That is important to me because we've kind of already talked about, I'm sure we'll dive even further into, ace is a spectrum. There are so many different sub-labels and so many different ways to be ace that even when you just say I'm ace, a lot of people don't even necessarily understand like what that means, but that they don't have to, right? So that's kind of what I explored a little bit with George's identity. Although book 2 does go more into the actual, like, I don't call it a coming out story, I call it like a coming in story, awareness, and how you come to accept ace as your identity. But for Funeral Girl, it just is.
First of all, I love the idea of a coming in story. I think that's just such a great term, and we should start talking about that all the time. Also, very exciting that there's a second book. So that's great news for everybody. Jen.
So I'm a late bloomer, which I am like totally okay labeling myself as. And I think because I was still trying to like figure out what flavor ace I was, that Lou had like it had to be a come out story in a way, because Lou has had sort of like one experience with attraction and sex with a boyfriend who she kissed like 47 times and describes his face as like limp fish or something like that. Like she's really not into it. And then an old friend from her past who she hasn't seen in 3 years comes back, and he's been in Toronto in the big city, and Lou lives on the Canadian prairies. And he sort of comes back and knows more. He's ahead in the journey that Lou's going through. So King like has a label for his sexuality and understands it. He understands or has come to an understanding about what it means to be a racialized person in Canada. And Lou is like still grappling with both of those things. So a lot of ways, like he's her guide through figuring out that there is a label. Because I hate to say this, but in a lot of the Canadian prairies, there isn't a diverse understanding of human sexuality, and the word gay is still often used as a slur. Like that's where we're at. So I also felt like for the setting, it had to be an exploration of getting closer to figuring out what term fit, and then maybe the different ways that one could be ace. And I don't think Lou comes to an understanding of that by the end of the novel. I think the big understanding is like, this makes sense. The big umbrella makes sense, but I don't know about any of the sub umbrellas. Maybe that's too much for Lou to experience or to explore. I know like I got really overwhelmed with the sub umbrellas. It was like, I'm really comfortable with this like term here, but I can't go any further.
Yeah, I think it's so fun because we talk about this idea of language as being this like liberator of like, as soon as you know what you are, then you feel free or whatever. But sometimes it's really constricting, and it can really like stop people from exploring that. So I think that's actually really interesting, and very real for a lot of teens who are going through that right now, especially in those more conservative environments where they maybe don't know, the labels aren't as present. I think that's really interesting. I do want to talk about each of you are writing very different styles of books. And so I do want to talk a little bit about how you each approached incorporating asexuality into your different subgenres. Speaking of sub-labels, obviously we have Jen, you're writing a sort of coming of age novel here. Sky, you have kind of more of a rom-com vibe going, and Emma, yours obviously has a speculative twist. So I'm just curious about how you incorporated asexuality into that, and how, if at all, the genre that you chose to work with changed how you were approaching that. Jen, let's start with you.
Sorry, one of my trees just got blown over in the wind, so I was distracted by the weather.
Incredibly Canadian thing to say.
I'm actually in Iowa.
Oh no, okay, well, so never mind.
How did I navigate writing like a contemporary or a coming of age story plus aceness? Is that the question? Okay. I feel like Lou's story is so much about coming to terms with her identity, and then recognizing that she has a community of people around her that she could rely on, right? Instead of trying to do everything herself. So I feel like the story about her nativeness and her understanding of that, the story of her aceness, and that the story of a friend coming back into her life who she has to figure out like if she can be friends with, and maybe if she wants to be more than friends with, mixed with the story of her father who wants something from her that she doesn't want to give. All of those threads are woven in together so that you can't pull one out and isolate it, which is how I come to story. I don't often see a story as one thing. I see it as a bunch of braids, like a friendship bracelet, that once you've braided them all into the pattern, you can't pull one out. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question, but that's where my gut wants
regardless.
To go.
I love this idea of the friendship bracelet. I think that's so apt in how building the different layers of story work, because they are all always interacting with each other, and you can't just pull one out and call it a day. Like, you really have to figure out how to weave those together. So that's great. I love that imagery. Emma.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with like the intersectionality of story with the intersectionality of identity. I think that's great. Wonderful. And here I am again, like forgetting what the question was.
That's okay. I'm just asking you generally about
the genre.
Yeah, yes. Subgenre, how that played into things, how you approached that.
So a lot of the speculative element of Ghosts, it discusses a lot of like fears that Georgia has, and I think it allowed me to kind of jump into a bit of the like existential side of sexuality and some of the fears that come along with like realizing you're ace in this world that's very allo, and you know, being worried that you're different, and there's this scary life that everybody wants to have a certain kind of partner to go along through the world with, and you don't necessarily want that, and how does that just affect how you see something as existential as mortality. And so it really dives a whole level into it, but along with it, I think the book is about death, but it is much more about family and friendships and like connecting with the people who are there for you. And so I think that is a huge kind of love story, especially for ace characters. And it was important for me to show that you know, Georgia has these strong friendships, and that is enough, even if she doesn't want a certain kind of partner in life. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, great. Sky, do you want to talk a little bit about how you explored kind of romance and rom-coms within asexuality?
Yeah, so it was a little bit difficult because it is like a rom-com, like the romance part of the rom-com, and like there's obviously like different tropes that go with it being a rom-com, like how you handle like a first kiss and like first date and like intimacy and whatnot. And Harper, it's very like, she was very like me, so she goes on Tumblr and she's like, okay, she's like, I know I like Margot, but what else comes with this identity that I don't know about? Because like for her, she's never heard these terms. She's never heard asexual. She's never really not really immersed in that community because of her parents' politics. And like she does have a friend who's non-binary, and she actually goes to them and she's like, hey, so I like Margot, but I don't know what to do with this information. And Bellamy tells her, like, well, you know, you need to do research. And so she does what I think a lot of teenagers used to do. So, like, she went online, she researched all these terms, she took a bunch of quizzes, like, am I gay, am I ace, am I a lesbian? And that's very much how, like, she came to terms with it for her. But, like, it was also like, oh my gosh, I do like Margot. Is Margot going to be okay with this? Because Margot is also not ace. And, like, it's like Margot has said, like, oh, I'm on this app for hookups, not because I want an actual relationship. And so Harper's like, oh, I like you, but if this is what you're looking for, I can't give that to you. And so it's very much navigating how Harper and Margot can have like a romantic relationship, but like not have like the nuances that come with like the non-romantic parts of a relationship that Harper just can't see herself giving. So Forward March leaves off where Harper is really just exploring like asexual. I think had like future Harper, she probably would have like researched like the different umbrella terms that go underneath asexual. But for her, she's like, okay, ace fits. This works for me. This quiz said that I'm ace, so this is the label I'm gonna stick with. So yeah, it's very much, just trying to navigate like different tropes really was the hard part. So like they do have a first kiss. It's very cute, sweet, short, and like that's it. And Harper's like, okay, this is fine. I wouldn't make a habit of it. And Margot's like very understanding. So yeah, so the fun and the hard part for me was like trying to figure out how to like incorporate the different like YA tropes. So yeah.
Wouldn't make a habit of it is such a funny thing. Like such a mood. I love that. Oh my gosh, no, that's such a vibe, I feel. Now I am curious about how you approached the audience for these books, because you know, as we are authors coming to these books, often we're thinking about who our readers are. And for some readers, this is going to be the first book that they read with an asexual character. And for others, this is going to be one of many, and they will have encountered many different flavors, again, of asexual representation. So I'm curious about how you approached balancing those two, if you thought about that at all, or, if that's something that was on your mind while you were drafting, and how that might have impacted how you wrote your main characters. Let's start with Emma.
Yeah, it's absolutely something that was on my mind, especially because I grew up not understanding aceness, and I kind of thought about this as for a lot of, especially a lot of people in my family, friends, like if they read this will be the first book that they have read with an ace character. And so I thought about how do you balance this is just the reality with the kind of some elements of teaching about it without like making it seem like you're, assuming that your audience is dumb or anything like that. And so I tried to focus on just highlighting the real moments that happen, sort of. Actually, the first example I have of this coming to my mind is actually for the non-binary character, but the character gets misgendered, and there's a quick correction, and whoever the person misgendering them says thank you and moves on. And like that kind of situation I wanted to just show, because that happens all the time, and that is like the best way to handle that kind of thing. And so for any reader seeing that, I hope that they would just take that as like, oh, okay, that's what's normal for queerness. Yeah.
Awesome. Sky.
Yeah, so I approached Forward March kind of like I was kind of aiming towards the people who have never heard what the term asexual. Like they have no idea what this word means. I didn't want it to be too preachy, so I show Harper like discovering like asexual and what it means like through different like articles that she finds online. And she does it in the form of writing a letter to her brother and explaining to him like, oh my gosh, hold on to all these resources for me because I'm going to need to reference these later. So I targeted that audience. Just people who don't know what it is, aren't familiar with it. I didn't really balance it very well with like trying to like target other people. I just wanted it to be like a really good like source of information for people who were like coming into it and didn't know what it means, because we very much marketed Forward March as a book that was asexual with an ace main character. So I wanted people who had no idea what that was to come into it and learn from it. And it was kind of nice and really validating that I've had like a lot of people like, oh, I had no idea what this was. This is like a really good teaching tool. I learned a lot from it. which has like been like really cool and like really like, I don't know, validating for me as like an ace like lesbian queer person. So
yeah, I love that. I think there's so much value in like different utility for different books, and that's such a cool thing that books that share this can still have very different uses and very different impacts on even the same reader. That's so cool. What about you, Jen?
So I think beyond writing for teens, I don't think too much about audience. I feel like if I'm writing for teenagers, hopefully I will have a career where I get to write lots and lots of stories. So this one can be the one where like Lou comes out and it's more of a discovering what aceness is, guided by Lou's friends. So both of Lou's friends are bi, and both of them have a very clear understanding of their sexuality, at least for where they are in their lives as 18-year-olds. So I sort of feel like this is one queer story that I have told, and I won't necessarily tell this version of it again. Hello, Beastie. And in other books can do other things, and that's okay. In terms of balancing the teaching with the story, I feel like that's one of my responsibilities as someone who writes for teens, is that I can model behavior. And someone that I was talking to about the Summer of Bitter and Sweet, I can't tell you who this person is because secrets. But they were actually less into the ace-ness and the ace romance. And they were more seeing it as a romance that was based heavily on consent. And that layers of consent were what allowed these two characters, one who is figuring out she's ace, to navigate a relationship that may or may not include kissing and other things. But it was about the layers of consent and how you could navigate that.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's very apt as well. Like, especially for almost any ace media, I think consent is layered in there so intrinsically, and I think it often gets either just kind of bypassed as like an extra layer. I don't know, but it's so important to any relationship. So I love that that's something that people are finding focus on. I do want to mention, since we do have some people watching, if you have questions for the group, please post them in the chat. I will be pulling from those questions in a few questions. So that would be great to have that in here. And then I'll also mention, just coming from the place of having written a couple of books now since they're all debuts, I will say it's absolutely the case that, with each book you find new ways to explore the identities, and you're never going to write the exact same exploration the same way. And that's been such a joy for me to explore aceness and aromanticism as well, with just a kind of fresh eye of like, okay, well, now what do I want to explore? And that's very fun. So I hope that you all get to do that with your next books too, and that'll be great. You are all debuts, so I do want to talk a little bit about that. This is your first book out, and I'm curious how that experience has been for you. Have you had any highlights, any reader interactions that have been really special, especially if they're, ace related, but this doesn't have to be ace related. It could just be the debut experience. Anything that's been really exciting for you. Sky, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so it's been so great. I got to do my very first my book launch. I got to do at the bookstore where my wife and I met. And like that's where we had our first date. And while we were doing the event, there was actually a queer couple who were there on their first date to have their book signed. And it was just like, it was so amazing. And I was recently at a Pride event, doing like I was like a vendor at this Pride event, and I partnered with the bookstore that was like local to the town, and they said like, well, since you're there, like if anybody comes in to buy your book, like, we'll send them to you to have it signed. I had one person and that was it, but it was so worth it. I was actually I had abandoned my table and I was watching a drag show, And my brother-in-law comes running up to me and he's like, Sky, you have to come back to the table. There's this girl and she wants her book signed. And I was like, oh my God, yay. Okay. So I go running and this girl's hysterical. Like she is like crying so hard. And like, it was just like, I don't know. She was so excited. Like, I don't know if it was to be me, I don't know. But like, she was crying. I started crying. Like we took pictures together and it was just like one of the best experiences. And it was kind of a reminder when I needed a reminder that this is like why I do what I do. So yeah.
That is so lovely. Oh my gosh. Reader interactions are so special. So yeah.
Yes.
Emma.
Yeah, I have gotten some just beautiful messages from readers, especially the ones that are like, oh my God, you just like published my journal, or like, this is my brain on a page. It just feels really, really, really special, because one of the reasons I wrote the book and one of the reasons I read is to feel less alone and to feel seen, because I did feel really, really alone in all of these thoughts. And so to have readers reach out and say they connected is like, that's the whole purpose. Like that, those few messages, that's it. That does it for me. That's why I do it. So it's been really, really special. And Sky, it's really cool that you talk about the bookstore where you had your launch event, because I actually got to do my launch event in the store where my partner and I got married. So
Oh my
very
God.
cool connections there. I love that a lot. And it's really cool to like meet people in person, and like it was in my hometown, so a lot of people that I knew came, and then there were a couple people I had no idea who they were, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. So yeah, very, very fun, very special, very exciting, wild journey. That's what debuting really is.
I love this theme of getting like having these big moments in bookshops. That's just so great. I love it. Jen, what about you? What has your debut experience been like?
A lot, in both the best ways and the most overwhelming ways. So I do not have a cute meet cute bookstore debut bookstore story to share. I think what I'm gonna tell you is about the first, wasn't my first signing experience. It wasn't my first in-person signing, but it was the first time that I recognized how my readers are different and express their joy differently than other readers. So I was at a diverse book fest in Chicago, and we had a signing of every single author in the gym of this middle school / high school. And I was sitting next to Chloe Gong. And Chloe's fans are so excited and screamy and like, sign my arm, sign my book, sign this thing William Shakespeare wrote once. And like, I felt so much joy there. And I maybe signed 6 books that day. It was really, really quiet. But every single reader interaction I had was a reader coming up to me in the hallway at the school, or really quietly and being like, thank you, this really mattered, or I really loved the Ace storyline. And we had like these whisper interactions. And I think sometimes as a debut, you can see the screaming interactions and think that they have more value than the quiet whisper interactions. And that Saturday in September is when I fully recognized that there is value in the way other people will react to a different story. So I've been collecting those quiet moments and just being like, thank you for telling me that. Like, thank you for sharing that. And really being excited by it in a quiet way, because I don't want to overwhelm them with my excitedness when they come to me like at a whisper.
That's such a special experience. I'll just chime in and say mine, since I can and I'm here and I'm in charge. But I totally agree with what you said, Jen. I during my first like big book event, I think I did some school visits, and then there was the big book event after it. It was Anderson's in Chicago, and I had a tween come up to me after I gave my little author talk, and I mentioned in the author talk that I was queer and that my book was queer, but the talk wasn't about that. And this kid came up to me afterward and came out to me as trans and said that they couldn't tell anyone in their family. They didn't feel comfortable telling any of their teachers, and the only person they had told was the librarian and me. And it was just this really special moment where you get to hold that space for someone else, and you realize that having representation in the world is just, it really does change lives and how special that can be. So yeah, and then I'll also add on the other side of things, I met my partner in a library. So and today is actually our meet cute anniversary. So she's gonna bring home sandwiches that we ate on our first like outing together. So it's very good, very, very cute. And then I do want to talk more about firsts because, you know, you're all debuts, but we have many firsts along the road. I'm curious about what the first asexual representation was that you encountered, or the first time you felt represented by a book. It doesn't have to necessarily be explicit ace rep, but something that really resonated with you that made you feel seen in your aceness. Let's start with, I don't remember who I started with, so we're going to start with Emma.
Yeah. I kind of have like, I guess, two answers for this, because the first time I really read a book with the word ace in it was not that long ago, like a few years ago. And the one that always sticks out in my mind is Loveless by Alice Oseman, because that was the first time I really like looked at a page and saw the word used and saw the descriptions and was like, oh my God, my brain. So Loveless has a very, very special place in my heart. But I kind of want to say that the first ace rep I ever read was The Hunger Games, because I truly believe that Katniss is ace, and the way she thinks about romance and the way she thinks about that in her environment, I just hands down, like I'm that's what I think. So The Hunger Games, I'll give it to that.
I fully agree with you. I did a very unhinged Twitter thread like many years ago about this, where I read the entire first book and like pasted, like I think I posted pictures of like every single line that was like, and here's an asexual.
I need to find this thread.
And it still gets me harassment to this day. So
Wonderful.
Fully agree with you. Jen, what about you?
So you just fixed the Hunger Games for me because I like literally threw the third book across the room and then gave it away because I was so unhappy with how those relationships were handled. But thank you, Rosie. You just fixed it. For me,
if you want to go find my thread and read all about it, it's all hashtagged the ASPEC games on Twitter. It's still there. I haven't deleted it.
I'm going there as soon as we're done here. But
I ruined my life for like a whole month doing that. Anyway,
Claire Kahn's Let's Talk About Love was the first book that I ever read with an ace character in it who was like ace on the page, and I didn't have to like fix what the author did to make what they were visible. And it was a revolutionary understanding of both myself and of that you could tell a story that had an ace character in it.
Awesome. Sky, what about you?
The Hunger Games. I just remember being so angry reading like Katniss in these relationships and not understanding like she's clearly not happy. Like she's not happy. Like she's putting herself in these situations with these boys and like she's just like Katniss being ace is like a hill that I will die on. So like I remember seeing your thread and I was like, yes, you're so right. Like yeah, it's definitely The Hunger Games and Loveless by Alice Oseman as well.
Yeah, that thread was the most correct I'll ever be about everything. And I still get people who yell at me about it, and I'm like, it's literary analysis. Like, go yell at a teacher or something. Like, I'm just doing what they told me to do. We do have an audience question that I want to pull right now. We've got questions on my list too, but I do want to just mention it because we talked about Hunger Games. Do you have any other book, movie, or TV characters that you headcanon as possibly on the ace spectrum? If there are any others out there that you think are like definitely ace, and I'll go ahead and start this off with kind of a niche one. But if anyone's seen the show Gallivant, I think that the king is like definitely ace for sure. It's a great show. It's a musical, like fantasy romp that's very tongue in cheek and very aware of itself. It's like if Monty Python was like updated to today, but the whole thing's a musical. It's excellent. There's like 2 seasons. I think it's on Netflix or Disney Plus. I think is what it's on right now. But it's top notch. If you like musicals, if you wished Once Upon a Time was just like more irreverent and also a musical, this is the show for you. But yeah, the king is definitely ace. So, Sky, do you have anything?
I prepared for this question too, and I can't remember anything that I thought of earlier. For me, I also like for Elsa from Frozen. Like she is one person, like she's ace. Like she just reads so ace to me, and like I don't know, her magic like is representative to me. It's like a big anxiety and like just I don't know. I'm like an Elsa fangirl, so like Elsa reads very ace to me. I cannot think of anybody else who
I mean, Elsa's a great answer. I think we're all nodding along with you. Totally agree. Jen, what about you?
So I have no headcanons, just zero. I just don't do that. I get angry at material that I don't think is working right, and then I just engage from it. I don't like decide that I'm gonna figure out what they did wrong and fix it. I just walk away. So no, I have none, but I'm sure there are tons of things that I stopped paying attention to that would have been better if the characters were ace.
That's a vibe. Emma?
I have just simply forgotten everything I've ever watched or read, so like nothing else is coming to mind, but I fully agree with Elsa. And yeah, I think that's so true.
Yeah, I mean, Elsa's, I feel like, the quintessential ace character that wasn't labeled as ace. But I actually think that quite a few Disney princesses vibe as ace for me. The like Rapunzel Entangled vibes is very like ace, but very romantic. And so I always kind of like think about that a little bit. But a lot of Disney characters I think really do. I'll also say like quite a few of the Disney princes feel very like Eric in The Little Mermaid feels very ace to me. Like just a little himbo ace. Let's talk a little bit more about Ace Rep as a whole. So not just our own books, but what we're looking at is the landscape of Ace Lit is growing so much so fast, to the point where when I started writing, I could point to like maybe a dozen Ace books in the world. Maybe. I'm thinking back on it now and I'm thinking that no, I really only knew like 3 or 4, and I hadn't done a ton of research, but I still only knew a couple. And now I have, enough people who I know are writing ace characters who I know well enough to bring onto panels that we had to split you all into 3 separate panels for this week, which is incredible. It was only like, I don't know, I guess 9 months ago that I was trying to do this for ARO week, and I was struggling to pull together like 4 people to do an ARO panel. So this is huge that we have this kind of representation in Lit right now. It's just incredible. But I'm curious about what you are excited to see from the world of Ace Lit that hasn't been done yet, or something that you would like to see maybe you just don't know about yet. But what are some areas that you would like to see explored more? What are some things in Ace Lit right now that are really exciting you? Anything that you want to share about that? Emma, let's start with you.
Yeah, I am really excited to just when you start to see more ace stories, you get to see more of that spectrum. And I think Jen earlier you said the different flavors of being ace. Like I want to have all of the flavors represented and all of the different subcategories and everything like that expressed, and that then along with aromanticism and like all the intersectionality that comes with being ace and aro and everything like that. So the more we see, the more we're gonna realize the spectrum is so much more vast than we thought. But I also am excited to see more ace love stories and whatever that means, whether it is like a romantic love story or a friendship story, because I think that for a long time there's just been this stereotype that like ace people are like frigid and don't have emotions and like all of these, and that's just so not true. It's just so not true. And so my second book is an ace romance, and it's been so cool to dive into that side of things versus Funeral Girl, which doesn't have any romance in it. And that's just I continue to look forward to that, and I continue to look forward to like all of the tropes but make it ace, like enemies to lovers but ace is so exciting to me. I love that, and I just want to see all of that, everything.
Absolutely. Sky, what about you?
Yeah, I like absolutely agree with Emma. Like I just want to see like every like part of the spectrum represented, and like I really want to see ace stories like in fantasy, like in a fantasy setting. I feel like fantasy, a lot of it is rooted like a lot in romance a lot of the time, and I would just love to see like an ace main character chosen one. I I don't know, maybe there is one and I just haven't seen it, but like I would love to see it like in an ace setting. I would love to see like in For March Harper is ace and she's also a lesbian, but I would also love to see like ace like somebody who's like ace and non-binary, ace and trans, ace and bisexual. Like I want to see ace with like every combination of like every sexuality. Like I don't know. I'm a nerd. I just want to see it everywhere.
I totally agree. I'll put a plug in for there's going to be a panel of authors just like this on Wednesday. I'm not sure what time it's at. I think it's at 3 p.m. Eastern, but I'll have to double check on Wednesday with fantasy authors. So there's going to be quite a few people there who are writing stories in that space that are great. All those books are awesome. So definitely check those out also. Jen.
So I'm just going to like loudly co-sign Emma and Sky. I don't think there's a particular thing I want, except for I want to see like multiplicity, and that makes me really happy and excited. I just so for my day job, I teach at a private liberal arts college here in Iowa, and I taught Margaret Owen's Little Thieves in my fiction writing class. And it was just like the students reacted so well to a fantasy world that was like queer normative and had ace main characters in a like adorable to me romance, but like maybe unconventional romance. So I want more and more and more and more. I am greedy.
Yeah, Little Thieves is phenomenal. Margaret is going to be on the panel on Wednesday. So for anyone who wants to hear more about Little Thieves, you should show up on Wednesday. That book was great. I had the best time. It was just like such a fun romp, and the demisexual romance was top notch. Loved it. Excellent. Since we are talking specifics, does anyone have any other ace books they want to shout out? Anything that you've read recently that really blew you away? Anything that's upcoming that you're excited about that you want to share with readers? Let's start with Jen, since you mentioned Little Thieves. See what else you've got in that brain of yours.
I have to tell you a secret, and that is the pandemic broke me, and the only thing I can read that isn't for one of my classes are like Kindle Unlimited universe romance books. So you do not want me wrecking any of that. You do not want me sharing what I am reading. Some of it's horrifying me, but I can't look away. So that's where my head is at. Apologies, I don't have anything more to.
That's okay. You gave us Little Thieves. That's a great one. Sky, what about you?
So I always recommend It Sounds Like This by Anna Mariano. I think she's in one of the other panels, and it's also a marching band book, so I'm a little biased, I think. I am also like a die-hard Ashley Shuttleworth fan, so like there's an ace character in the Dark and Hollow Star saga, and like I was so excited when like this character, like I don't want to spoil it, but this character was like blatantly said like I am asexual, and I was like, oh my god, like this is my favorite character. Like I went on Twitter and like thanked Ashley for like in a couple of tweets, like I don't know, but it was so good. So like the Dark and Hollow Star saga by Ashley Shuttleworth, and I'm also really looking forward to I think it's Love Letters to Joy by Melissa C. Has an ace character, so I'm like really excited for that.
Awesome. Yeah. Emma.
My current fave is Ace is Wild by Amanda DeWitt, and Amanda's going to be on, I can't remember which, another one of these panels to talk more about it, but it's phenomenal. It's a group of chaotic aces. So like what else could you want? Highly recommend. But I also really, really do love Ace by Angela Chen, I want to say is, yes. And it's nonfiction, and I think it's especially wonderful if you're trying to be more educated on it, whether for yourself or for, just gaining empathy into the ace community. But it does a wonderful job of showing many stories of aceness and across the spectrum. And it's really, really beautiful. And I listened to the audiobook too on like a long drive, and it just like made me like cry as I'm like driving my car. So I love it. Highly recommend that if you're looking for nonfiction space as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Anna Mariano and Amanda DeWitt will both be on the panel on Sunday, which I do not have the time for on what time it's at, but it is on Sunday on this same channel. So keep an eye out for that for sure. I'll go ahead and give a plug for a couple books too. I wanna plug Alicia Dow, who writes science fiction that's very romantic and sweeping, and it feels like kind of like rom-coms in space, or like I don't know. It's just very feelingsy, and I love it. And so The Kindred came out earlier this year, and it's really phenomenal. It's a demisexual main character with a sort of soulmate trope vibe going on, and it's fantastic. I've been dying for a like ace spec exploration of the soulmate trope, just because I feel like soulmate tropes often leave ace people out, and it was really, really well done, and I loved that. It looks like Sunday is also at 3 p.m. Eastern, so check out that panel. Alicia will be on the panel on Wednesday, so if people want to come for that. And then we had an audience question that I'd love to get to as well. Do you have any advice for aspiring queer writers who are worried about pushback? Does anyone want to jump in on this one? I don't want to like call on you if you don't want to answer, or if you don't have a good one, but anyone want to jump in on it?
I think, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Go first.
Okay. The first thing that kind of comes to my brain is, and it's easier said than done, don't worry about pushback. Like it's much more important that you focus on just telling your story. No matter what. Like no matter what you write, whether it's queer or not, like you'll get pushback of some kind. You can never please everybody with one book. And so it's just, to me, more important that you're focusing on the story that's in your heart, the story that you want to tell, because, you know, what reviews will say and everything that comes later down the line, just really engross yourself in the story first and foremost.
So yeah, right. And don't worry about the pushback, because that will change your writing, and often that will do harm to your story. And then the follow-up, the second part of that is to find your community who are going to be there when the pushback happens, and work with publishing professionals who are going to be behind you and are going to be there when someone comes after you, when someone tries to ban your book because it was too queer or too ace or too whatever. So write, and then have your people, and have a team that supports you, and the pushback doesn't matter then in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Sky, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I think exactly what Emma and Jen said. And for me, a lot of times, like if there's pushback, that means your book and your stories probably needed to be told. And tell your story, find your community, get a really good team behind you. Don't listen to the pushback. I mean, tell your story. Somebody out there needs it.
Yeah, totally agree. For kind of a last question here, I don't know how much you can all share about this. So if you can't share anything, just kind of give us a wink and say that there are secrets. But I'm curious what everyone is working on next. What can we look forward to seeing from you in the future? Sky, do you want to start us off?
So before we like, I logged on here, my wife referred to me as Tom Holland because I can't keep anything quiet. So all I'm gonna say is I'm not allowed to say anything.
Okay. We've got a secret from Sky. What about you, Jen?
I am holding on to so many secrets that I feel nauseous, but I can tell you that my second YA Out with Heart Drum will come out in fall 23, and it's about a group of teens who work at a pizza shop. So I've traded ice cream for pizza, and they think that they see a missing Indigenous teen that the police have stopped looking for really late one night.
Ooh. ...
That
sounds amazing. I was gonna make a joke about, is it called like Winter of Sauce and Crust, but that was
no.
Then you went serious with it. So
no, it is not. It is not. The title is Those Pink Mountain Nights, and the shop is called Pink Mountain Pizza. So pizza was there at one point.
I love that. That's great. And now I know that I just need to like slide into all of your DMs to find out your secrets. Emma, what about you?
Yeah, so my second book is out in 2024 with Learner, and it is a queer, updated version of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. So instead of Beatrice and Benedict, it's Beatrice and Benny. It's a female-female story. And it dives a little further into the, like I said before, like the coming in of realizing your ace, and especially how that goes kind of along with having a crush on somebody, and maybe how the crush might look different than what you've been told crushes are supposed to look like, and things like that. But I'm obsessed with it. I love it. My deadline is actually November 1st, so I gotta write right after this.
That's very soon.
Yeah,
I've been dying for an A-spec exploration of Much Ado About Nothing, mostly because I've been really wanting to make a Much Aro About Nothing joke. But if it's not Aro, I don't know. But I've been thinking about that for like literal years. I've been like, somebody has to do this so I can make that joke specifically. So so thank you. Can everyone just tell us one more time where to find you online and the name of your book so people can find you after this? Let's start with Emma.
Funeral Girl is the name of my book. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at OHKEMMA.
Okay, Sky.
So my book is Forward March. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and sometimes TikTok at Sky_Quinlan.
Right, and Jen?
So Ryan the Solid made fun of me because I'm really bad at this. I don't remember my own URL, and they're all different for all different platforms, but you can find me on Twitter at Jenny Lee, LEESD, and that will link you to all the other things. So start there and you can find what you need.
Great. All right. And if you want to find me, I'm also on Instagram and Twitter as @Rosiee Thor, and I am on TikTok, but don't find me. And I'm going to have a lot of other Ace Week programming on my Twitter, and as well as these panels that are coming up. So check it out. There's going to be more stuff coming this week. I'm excited to share with all of you. So thanks so much to Lily for hosting us, Utopia State of Mind. And thanks for the questions from the audience. I hope you'll show up for the other panels, which again are Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.